Good morning, Senators Block, Allen, and Morlock, and staff. Again, my name is Susan Yamate, and I'm the director of the San Diego Adult Education Regional Consortium. Thank you for the opportunity to share about our progress thus far. I would only ask that as you hear about San Sierra's consortium, that you recognize we are but two of the 71 consortia, each of us being unique to our region and local needs. It would have been great if there was time for you to hear from all 71 of us. Adult education in San Diego County has a long history of collaboration. The Adult Ed Block Grant process has given us yet another opportunity to continue this collaboration. So specifically, the San Diego Adult Educational Regional Consortium, which includes the San Diego Community College District Continuing Education and the San Diego Unified School District Adult Education, serves the entire city of San Diego. The San Diego Continuing Education includes 7 campuses and over 200 off-campus sites. San Diego Unified Adult Education Program is comprised of 5 site locations with facilities on high school campuses throughout the district. San Diego Continuing Ed served almost 26,000 students, and San Diego Unified Adult Ed served just over 800 adult learners in 2013. It is important to note that San Diego Unified, their adult education program only provides classes in one area, that being adult secondary education. San Diego Community College Continuing Ed provides education in all of the allowable adult education program areas. It is also important to note that San Diego Unified adult student enrollment has dropped approximately 66% due to K-12 funding flexibility, which resulted in budget reductions to the San Diego Unified Adult Education Program. San Diego Continuing Ed and San Diego Unified Adult Education have provided a joint high school diploma program since 1979. This long-lasting collaborative partnership has enabled thousands of adult learners to obtain the high school diploma and continue on by successfully transitioning to career pathway training, community college study, and/or the job market. The AB 86, AB 104 process has not only strengthened this long-standing partnership, but has also provided a much greater opportunity to evaluate current services, identify regional student needs, and to develop a 3-year plan to address these needs. Our consortium has a 4-member governing team. 2 representatives each are appointed from the college and from San Diego Unified. We make decisions through consensus. We've chosen not to have a fiscal agent. Our goal for adult education is to provide ongoing learning opportunities and prepare diverse students for advancement, assisting students to transform their lives. We came to this lofty mission during the AB 86 planning process, where after surveying our systems, we found gaps in access to programs, quality of program, and student support services. Because of the long-standing delineation of function agreement, we, for 2015-16, simply funded each district by the percentage of students served, which was approximately a 25-75% split. And we will look at the budget each year. With respect to successes and challenges, the spirit of the legislation asked us to develop a system that was transparent to the community and seamless in service. It also asked us to look at leveraging resources. For our 2 members, being 2 of the largest districts in the state, being able to start these conversations was challenging. I'm proud to report that at the curricular level, San Diego Unified Adult Education and San Diego Community College Continuing Ed are regularly meeting to update and revise curriculum leading to the joint high school diploma. Because of the Adult Ed Block Grant and other initiatives like Career Pathways, Carl Perkins, CalWorks, SSSP, DSPS, to name a few, conversations have turned into planning teams to address leveraging resources, data collecting and data sharing, and communication. This is exciting and no small feat for large organizations such as ours. This leads to one of our countywide successes, the morphing of our long-standing countywide adult education network into an adult education block grant superregion. We 5 consortia, there are 5 in San Diego County, meet monthly because the challenges we each face in our individual consortia are actually to a lesser or greater degree affecting all of us in San Diego County. And while we have boundaries to our regions, the community is not restricted to where they choose to attend classes. We find the need to meet and collaborate important and efficient. We as a super region are looking at countywide professional development, countywide marketing and branding of adult education. We are looking at an efficient way to collaborate with our community partners, for example, Health and Human Services, County Sheriff, the library system, WIOA, the CBOs, who really don't have the time or staffing to meet 5 times on issues that touch all of us. We are also looking at statewide issues that include data collection and measures of effectiveness, reciprocity in hiring of instructors, and funding issues so that we can communicate to you as a larger body. This has been a fast and packed summary. I want to end again by expressing my gratitude at being able to share where we are in the first year of implementation in the city of San Diego. We continue this work to better serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Yamada, it used to be in San Diego, at least, that most of the adult education in San Diego County in the city of San Diego was done by the community college district.
And that's still true.
And most of the adult education in the southern part of the county was done by the high school districts or K-12 districts.
Right.
In the discussions now, is one model winning more favor than the other, or seem to be more effective than the other, whether it's done primarily by K-12 or primarily by community colleges?
In our countywide discussions, we really are seeing that all 5 of the consortia were looking at the gaps of services to students. And so where in the East County, Grossmont Union High School District was largely the provider of adult education, and in South County where Sweetwater was, the discussion with the 2 colleges are there's still not enough of us providers for all the students who need help. So there has been more on how can we expand the services, how there's been a lot of look into transitional counseling for students both at the high school adult ed programs to be able to know about what's offered at the colleges. Grossmont College doesn't have a continuing ed program, and they're beginning to start that so that we can look at more ESL classes. Southwestern and Sweetwater are having a really robust discussion again about Southwestern has ESL on their credit side. So the discussion on how the transition happens between Sweetwater and Southwestern, and Coronado isn't included in that consortia. So the discussions have been very open and very collegial with respect to, it's always looking at the student and making it transparent to the student. So I would say, yes, some things are changing. While we understand that the leadership or the larger part of the programs have been offered by the Union High or the K-12s, the amount of sharing, the looking at reciprocity of instructors, who does what best, and in some cases, it may be the pathways in the CTE programs and that the adult schools on the K-12 side do that prep. All of those discussions have been really great this year. And we thank you all for that.
Good to hear that. Moving now to other committee members, if they have any questions or comments. Yes, sir.
Overly thorough.
Okay. All right. In that case, I want to thank you two for bringing us the local perspectives. Appreciate it very much. And now I will call up the panel that I'm supposed to call up, which is on issue number 2, K-14 education mandates. This is Rebecca Hamilton, Dan Kaplan, Deborah Brown, and Dan Troy. And again, other support staff may sit on either side of the dais. And we'll begin with the Department of Finance, Rebecca Hamilton.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Rebecca Hamilton, Department of Finance. The governor's budget provides $219 million in Proposition 98 ongoing funds for the K-12 mandate block grant and $33 million in ongoing Proposition 98 for the community college block grant. In addition to the amount proposed in the block grant, the governor's budget provides $1.3 billion in one-time Proposition 98 discretionary funds for K-12 local educational agencies and $76 million in one-time Proposition 98 discretionary funds for community colleges. To the extent that these LEAs and community colleges have outstanding mandate debt, our proposal is structured so that we receive the concurrent benefit of paying down that mandate debt. The administration's proposal emphasizes that all LEAs should benefit from these one-time resources, and the intent is that the K-12 LEAs use these funds for local needs and priorities, such as content standards implementation, technology infrastructure, and deferred maintenance. Similarly, on the community college side, the intent is that the community colleges use these funds for local needs and priorities, such as campus security infrastructure and developing open educational resources. Consistent with previous budgets, the funding is allocated on an average daily attendance and full-time equivalent student basis to ensure an equitable distribution of funds to all LEAs and community colleges. And finally, the administration proposes language requiring that a reasonable reimbursement methodology based wholly or partly on claimed costs be developed with costs that have been audited by the State Controller's Office.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. We'll now go to Dan Kaplan from the Legislative Analyst's Office.
Good morning. Dan Kaplan, as you just mentioned. Today I will be providing, first of all, an overview of education mandates more broadly, then our assessment of the governor's proposal, and finally, an alternative payment proposal for a payment plan. But first, an overview of education mandates. Proposition 4, passed in 1979, created a constitutional requirement for the state to reimburse local education agencies and local governments more broadly for the activities it mandates of them. The traditional method of going about this reimbursement process was for the local government to perform the activity, document costs, submit these costs to the state via a claims process, and then the state to eventually reimburse these claims. However, the state went many years with deferring these payments on these claims, and as a result, this sizable backlog emerged. Since 2010 and 11, the state has committed $4.5 billion to paying down these claims. However, our office estimates that the current backlog remains at $1.9 billion. About 1.6 of this is attributed on the K-12 side. This is solely from districts and county offices of education, notably not charter schools, as well as roughly $300 million for community colleges. As the administration already mentioned, their plan commits another $1.4 billion towards paying down this mandate backlog, and funding will go out evenly on a per student basis. However, we have some concerns with this proposal, namely that when you look at the actual claims that remain outstanding in the backlog, there are clear disparities that emerge, or that are evident. If you look at page 3 of our handout, you see that school districts, only about 50% have claims outstanding. Of county offices of education, only about 70% have claims outstanding. And on the community college side, only about 14% have claims outstanding. The community colleges are particularly notable in that of the top 4 claimers in the community college system, out of the 72 districts, the community college districts, they account for over 90% of the community college backlog, despite having fewer than 7% of the total students in the community college system. In fact, the highest claimer of the community colleges accounts for over half of the total backlog that the state has on the books. It's because of this that we believe that providing funding on a per student basis, while having advantages in the past when the vast majority of local education agencies had claims outstanding, while that was an appropriate method of awarding payments in the past, it's going to become increasingly inefficient as time goes on, and more of these local education agencies begin to fully retire their backlog. We estimate that using the governor's approach, the state would eventually have to commit $180 billion to fully retiring the mandate backlog. And again, this backlog only stands at $1.9 billion. So as an alternative proposal, we seek to strike a balance between spreading out funding evenly to all entities that have both claims on the books and that don't have claims on the book. This is consistent with the general purpose of the mandates, in that all entities are required to perform the same activities. We believe this method is notable because it does not reward high claimers. However, our strategy will still be able to retire the backlog within a reasonable sum of money. What we propose to do is provide funding to school districts and county offices of education over the next 2 to 3 budget years. And it would be an opt-in program, and as a condition of receiving fundings, these local education agencies, notably schools and county office of education, would be required to write off all claims they have outstanding on the books through 2015-16. In terms of the actual funding allocations the state would pay under our plan, we've set this equal to the median value of the claims outstanding on a per student basis. So if we look at all the existing claimers that have still not been fully repaid, if we take this median value on a per student basis, we see it's $450 when we look at both districts and county office of education. So we propose to award K-12 districts with $450 per student. County Office of Education would receive the same $450 per student. However, they would also receive an additional $20 per county-wide student supplement. And this is because that county-wide or county offices of education often perform activities for the counties at large, and as a result can incur higher costs. Now, because certain rural counties have very few students who actually report to these county offices of education, we propose to create $1 million floor such that no county office of education would receive less than $1 million. In total, our proposal would cost $2.6 billion, assuming that all school districts and county offices of education were to participate. The added benefit, though, is that that would fully retire the backlog. Two notable differences between our proposal and the governor's proposal is that we do not propose to provide funding for community colleges, and that's going back to the idea that I mentioned earlier that only 10 community college districts have claims outstanding. As a result, we'd have a leakage rate of any payments of approximately 85%, so it would be very inefficient to pay these claims out. We propose that the state continue to monitor these claims, but return to paying down this backlog once the vast majority of community colleges once again have claims outstanding on the books. As for charter schools currently do not have any claims outstanding because as of 2006, they have been ineligible to submit mandate claims. So no portion of the backlog is attributed to charter schools. Therefore, we do not propose to provide funding to charter schools in 2016-17. Another reason why we withhold, or why we propose not to provide funding to charter schools is that they have been paid out at the same rate on a per student basis as school districts over the past 5 years, despite the fact that many of the mandates that charters are required to perform, or that districts are required to perform, charters do not have to perform. So essentially we've been overpaying charters over the past several years. We propose that the state return to the backlog once again when the vast majority of school districts, county office of education once again have claims outstanding on the books. Moving on to the block grant, which is the alternative payment method for dealing with mandates. We see that the block grant has near universal participation rates when we look across the state. However, the rates in which the state pays out the rates at which the state provides funding through the mandate block grant have not changed since 2012-13 when the mandate block grant was originally created. The Department of Finance notes that certain mandates within this mandate block grant are for one-time activities. However, the block grant encompasses dozens and dozens of mandates, many of which require ongoing activities. Therefore, in order to maintain the purchasing power of the mandate block grants, we propose that the state apply the same COLA that Department of Finance proposes for many other categorical programs. This is about a half a percentage point in 2016-17 and would only cost the state about $1.2 million.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. We'll move on now to Deborah Brown, Department of Education.
Good afternoon, Deborah Brown with the Department of Education. We would just note that we're pleased to see the continued use of the one-time dollars to pay down the mandate backlog. Would also say that we agree that the mandate block grant is the better approach as opposed to the old claiming methodology or the current claiming methodology, but it does provide greater certainty for the state on the cost of the mandates and also for districts, and that standardized rate does help with budgeting. So we want to encourage LEAs to continue to participate in the block grant and not revert back to the claiming process, and would add that we also support the LEO's recommendation around providing the COLA to the block grant.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Move now to Dan Troy, Community Colleges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Dan Troy, Vice Chancellor of Fiscal Policy at the California Community College Chancellor's Office. We're supportive of the administration's proposal to provide funding to community colleges on a per FTS basis. As was noted by the Department of Finance, the chief purpose of the goal was to provide proportionate funding for districts so that all of our districts can benefit from some one-time discretionary resources across the board, as has been the practice in the past couple of years. So we're supportive of that proposal, and as noted by the Department of Finance, this can help districts address a variety of needs, such as campus security, infrastructure needs, information technology, development of open educational resources, techniques, and some other issues as well. So we're supportive of that approach. As for the ongoing block grant in the budget, we are also supportive of continuing that process. We are also supportive of the LEO's recommendation to annually apply the COLA to that. That'll keep the block grant attractive for districts to use and get around that issue of the problems of the ongoing claiming process. And we note, given that the COLA this year is less than 0.5%, it's a pretty cheap year to start that precedent.
Thank you, Mr. Troy. Question first for Department of Finance. What's wrong with the LAO's plan?
We're still looking at the very specifics of the plan, but I would say kind of on a higher level, our plans have two different goals. So our goal is to provide discretionary funds to all LEAs and not to limit that, not to condition that on writing off possibly large amounts of mandate claims. So our goal is to take these one-time resources that are here and get that out to the LEAs and allow them to put that towards any variety of activities that they would use those funds for. We view the mandate payment kind of as a secondary concurrent benefit of the discretionary funds. So I would just say there's two different goals, priorities.
Okay, so this is partly then, if I'm understanding it, mandate repayment and partly just supplemental funding for whatever needs there might be. Is that correct the way to characterize it? Do you want to?
Sure. Chris Ferguson with the Department of Finance. I think that's a fair way of characterizing it, in that the administration's goal is to provide the discretionary resources, whereas the LAO's goal is to retire mandate debt.
And LAO, I guess, where would you say the legislature's goal is in this? Is it primarily to retire the mandate debt or to do what the Department of Finance is trying to accomplish?
I think our proposal does both. These are, there are no conditions attached with this funding. Many of the mandated activities that we are reimbursing for occurred decades ago. So LEAs that receive funding under our proposal would be able to use the funds for any purpose. However, we do recognize that the state does have a constitutional requirement to pay down this mandate debt. This was part of the governor's wall of debt for many years, and prior to that, it was part of the California credit card. So it is an ongoing issue, and we believe an important one for the state to address.
And your payback plan would require, I guess, $2.6 billion versus the $1.8 billion finance?
I believe it's 1.4.
1.4?
Yes.
1.4 billion.
And yet your plan leaves out the community colleges and yours includes community colleges? How do you feel about that, Mr. Troy?
Thank you for teeing that up, Mr. Chair. Community colleges enjoy receiving money, and we'd like to get more of it. And a little more serious response. I know the LAO's goals being to retire mandate claims obviously leaves the colleges out for the reasons that they bring up. But I would note that this is money owed to the colleges through the Prop 98 guarantee. This is settled up. We're getting our finances and giving our share of money in part because that helps us get to that statutory 10.93%. So it's unclear for me in the LAO proposal, by excluding us from the mandate program, are we getting those resources in another way, or how would that be distributed? Because I do feel it is owed to the colleges one way or another.
Okay, and lastly, for me, Ms. Brown, you may have stated this in your opening comments, but do you have a favorite among the two plans, and which is it and why?
On the backlog, we don't currently have a position. We're still looking at the proposals, but don't have a position at the moment.
Okay, thank you all for that. Move now to other members of the committee. First, the Vice Chair, if you have any questions, then we'll go to Senator Ellis.
Yes, I do. Could you give me a typical claim? Or two or three? Or four? Or what's the most
Maybe two.
often
You're
item
referring,
claimed?
are you referring to the amount claimed or the type of mandate?
You've used the term education mandate claims. So you're sending a form to the Department of Finance. What are you asking money for?
So there's 47 current educational mandates. I can send you a complete list after the hearing, but some off the top of my head.
Can't you just read it to me now?
Sure.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, okay.
This Proposition 4 passed in 79, and apparently it did not have repayment terms, or it just said the state has to pay the claims, but it doesn't say when.
Exactly, and there was a recent court ruling that reiterated the fact that the state has to pay down these claims. However, given separation of powers, the judge could not force or compel the state to award these claims.
I was a party of that suit. Yeah. It's a real funny thing when you're a supervisor of a county and you know you get a mandate and you get a reimbursement and then the state doesn't pay it. So then you go to a judge to say, hey, we got a debtor here. And we did it with the county of San Diego. And the judge said, yeah, state owes you the money, but they can pay you whenever they want. So from 79 to current, these claims, I'm assuming every year for about maybe first 25 years, the state's been paying on time, and we kind of get to these recessions. So 94, a backlog, and then we pay it off, and then to early 2000s backlog and pay it off, and then middle of the 2000s, and we have a massive backlog. So do we have that charted at all on how the state is, you know, what's the receivables and the payables? What are the districts expecting? What are the state?
It's a somewhat difficult activity to actually perform because many of the decisions as to what are the state's liabilities are ultimately up to the discretion of the rulings of the Commission on State Mandates. So they can rule that certain aspects of activities or suddenly become a mandate, and the mandate backlog can grow by billions of dollars somewhat overnight. Otherwise, and at other times they can rule that activities that were previously thought to be mandated were no longer mandated, and as a result, the backlog can shrink.
So it could just be a judgment call based on the majority of the committee, and then that committee oversees mandate claims from not only school districts but from cities and counties as well.
That's correct.
Okay, and then
Just 1 second.
So Edgar Cabral with the Legislative Analyst Office. I just wanted to, on that point, I think one of the challenges has been that the Commission rules whether or not something is considered a mandate, and then the Controller's Office has a list of mandate claims, and they put out an annual report. The challenge is one is the issues of litigation. So if something is under litigation, maybe there's a challenge to the Commission's ruling. Is that or is that not considered a mandate? The other issue is that in the controller reports, in some cases they have not taken into account the latest mandate payments that the state has made. So, for example, the latest controller report does not include the mandate payment that the state included in 2015-16. So, I think Senator Morlock, your description of kind of the ebbs and flows historically, I think is right. But in terms of having the year-to-year numbers, that's where it can be a bit challenging to figure that out. We were trying to do that, and we ended up just looking at trying to calculate the current backlog rather than going back a couple years before because of these challenges.
well, I think the Department of Finance has created a disincentive for districts and cities and counties, and it's very dysfunctional, to train us to be very mindful of our budgets. And we set funds aside, and then when the economy tanks, the state says, oh, you've got reserves, we'll take them. And that's got to stop somewhere, somehow, because it's going to force everybody to not save money. In fact, so I'm a little amazed that we haven't gotten further along since Prop 4 in 79. It's like we probably need another ballot measure so that the state just can't willy-nilly start taking money from districts that are trying so hard to run their businesses properly. So sorry, Ms. Hamilton, for me to rant a little bit, but you know, in a recession, it's not like we're your bank. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Senator Morlock. Move now to Senator Allen.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. First of all, for Mr. Kaplan, I wanted to get, I heard you say that you're suggesting $1 million floor for every county. Now, I'm seeing on page 14 in the staff report, it talks about county offices receiving the greater of 1 million or 450 per ADA. Is that what you meant? Or is that?
So it is the greater of 1 million or 450 per ADA that actually physically reports to that county office, plus a $20 supplement for the countywide ADA.
Okay.
This supplement is consistent with the block grant, which awards $1 per countywide ADA.
So it's not as though Alpine County, for example, which has 1,000 people, would get $1 million minimum.
That is, I'm not familiar. I can look up what the rates are for Alpine, but every county will get at least $1 million under our proposal. Certain counties that can be quite small and have less than 100 ADA that physically report to that office, but they would still be eligible. They would still receive at least $100 million under our proposal.
Is that appropriate when you have counties that are so tiny, they've got the number of people of one apartment building in LA?
It's a challenge because many of these small counties are also have many school districts that are quite small within their county, and as a result, they may have to take on even higher, even greater expenses as a result of the mandated activities the state requires.
I think to provide an example, I think we've seen in looking at this, county offices just tended, even controlling for size, county offices tended to have higher mandate claims, and part of it in looking at it, there are some cases where county offices are providing regional services, for example, for special education, and those services for those students, that's not reflected in the county office's ADA. Their ADA that we've been using is specifically the LCFF ADA primarily for court schools and kids who have been expelled from their school districts, those groups. So in some cases, just looking at the ADA does not give a kind of good enough reflection of the cost that the county is incurring. So that's why we had the estimate of the $1 million. We put the $1 million sort of floor in our recommendation just to make sure that in those cases, and many of those rural counties are the places where the county office is involved in providing some of those regional services.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so let me, have the school districts weighed in at all on this? I mean, I'm hearing Department of Education hasn't, but have you heard from CSBA or AXA or anyone else on these two proposals with regards to dealing with the mandates backlog?
We haven't heard specifically official position from those groups.
Okay.
Neither have we.
Okay, all right. Okay. So this is sort of just a kind of competing ideas that we're going to look at and mull over, and the governor will win. And, okay. All right. Great. All right, thank you. Thank you.
In defense of Alpine County, they have 1,159 people there.
And I've got to say, not for any further discussion this hearing, but along the lines of what Mr. Allen's asking, questions been raised for many, many years, and I've raised it myself several times, whether there should even be 58 county offices of education, or whether some of the small county offices should actually merge into regional offices and be funded, whether there's frankly,
yeah, I mean, you know, as you say, it's 1,000 people in one guy, and you know, it's a beautiful place. I've actually been there. It's fantastic. I just don't know that, you know, I'm not sure that, I think that kind of model would make so much more sense.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot in 6 or 7 years ago. It's a tough political battle because every county wants its own office and every county board member wants his or her own office. So, but it's definitely worth revisiting. Yeah. With that, I will thank and excuse this panel and call up panel on issue number 3, Prop 39, Clean Energy Funds. Dan Kaplan will stay with us, so will Deborah Brown. We'll also be joined by Deborah Ede from the Department of Finance, Drew Bohan from the California Energy Commission, and Dan Troy will stay with us. Let's see, we have 5 panelists, 4 mics. Okay, Dan, so you'll be up there as our lead?
Yes, we have staff here who will answer the questions for you.
Okay, great. First, we'll go to Dan Kaplan from the LEO.